Good evening and welcome to this Happy
Mic
Guru. My
off.
name's Kirsty Bentley-Taylor. I'm continuing on with my Ancient Antidotes series today. It's probably going to be the last one for a while because I kind of feel like I want to shake it up a little bit for myself as well as anything else. But I'm ending this part of the series anyway on a book that's become very special to me, and a theory, philosophy, religion, idea of the world that has really kind of allowed me to let go of a lot of stuff, a lot of hang-ups, a lot of routines, a lot of things that I think I came into this or up into this world believing that you had to do things a certain way to get a certain outcome. And I'm talking about a book called The Tao Te Ching. And this is a series of poems, really, poems, kind of really beautiful prose that was passed down, was written down. It's attributed to a guy called Lao Tzu, a Chinese philosopher and scholar who dated from about 500 BC. So this work's about 2,500 years old. So when we're talking ancient, again, we're talking a long time ago. And it was a series of, or the Tao Te Ching, sorry, is a series of kind of verses. I think we'll go with verses. It's a series of verses that helps to explain how you can live peacefully within the world, how you can live abundantly within the world, how you can really live in a state of harmony with the world. The Tao Te Ching, in fact, means, when it's translated, the book of the way. And the way is everything. The way is 10,000 things, according to Lao Tzu. The way is everything that you see, everything that you are, everything that is the way. And I suppose in terminology in this day and age, we'd be looking at kind of the idea of a God, or the idea of source, or the universe, or higher consciousness, something like this. But 2,500 years ago, Lao Tzu or the people around that time were talking about this as being the way to live, the way to be in harmony, the way to be at peace. And I kind of talk with a little bit of hesitation about Lao Tzu being the author of the Tao Te Ching, because he may well have documented this down, like many scribes and sages who came before him. Certainly when we think about like the Bible and how many times that's been written and rewritten over the years, you come to believe and you come to understand that everything that's been written has been written through somebody else's interpretation, and they will have had it spot on in some instances, and maybe they just missed the mark in others. And then that interpretation has been open to other people's interpretation, because obviously we're all different and we all look and read things and see things and experience things with our own experiences and lives and personalities and everything like that, as a background to that, as a foundation. So when I say that Lao Tzu is the author of the Tao Te Ching, I think I love the story that Lao Tzu came from a part of China at the time that was warring. There was two fractions that were warring. So it's about 500 years BC. And the legend goes that he was coming into the mountain pass, heading westward to escape the war, to escape the turmoil. And as he got to the gate at the Hanu Pass, the gatekeeper there recognized him and knew of him as being a great philosopher and somebody who was wise and that would know, a great knowledge and a great wisdom. And he asked him to write down, before he disappeared off to the west, asked him to write down the way, the way that he saw life, the way that he was living life, the philosophy that came from him, or he was famous for. And this is where the Tao Te Ching has come from. So it's a short book. It's a short series of verses, 81 in all, and they're not really very complicated. Although I think I've read a couple of translations from Chinese into English, and they differ slightly in translation, but the essence remains the same. The sentiment remains the same. But very typically of a lot of Chinese that I've read that's been translated, there always seems to be something that's missed. And the fact that the Chinese write so eloquently and with such beauty and with such like I call it floralism. You know, they make everything seem like a work of art, and they do that with their words, and they do that with their painting, and they do that with their dance and with their tapestry and all of those sorts of things. And I'm a great fan of Asian art. There's always so many depths to it that you know, I'm always very intrigued by it. So for me, working through the Tao Te Ching is you know, is a beautiful thing itself, because you're beginning to learn about a different culture that's very, very different to the Western culture. You know, Eastern culture is very different, and they really have a very different mindset to us in the West still. You know, even though we see China becoming this great superpower, and we become, you know, having lived in Thailand, I see how westernized they're becoming and how they love Western culture, and you know, they kind of, if they want to emulate that, there, you know, there's still that pride in the subcontinent Asian culture that has prevailed for thousands and thousands of years. And of course, China has been really the forerunner in all of that, because of the wealth, because of the size of the country, because of all the history and the dynasties, and you know, Chinese history, you know, dates back thousands and thousands of years, and it's very well documented because of the amount of grammar and the level of intelligence that there was, and the importance on intelligence and the importance of documenting everything that there was throughout those ages. So I first encountered Taoism, which is a sort of a religion that's come out of the Tao Te Ching, when I was traveling around Vietnam, and we were in this tiny little village, and there was this beautiful temple, and it was very different from the temples that I'd seen, the Buddhist temples that I'd seen in Vietnam, and so we went to explore, and I discovered it was a Taoist temple. And I didn't really know anything about Taoism. I was kind of like, oh, lovely. But it's very, very colourful, lots of pictures of flowers and plants and animals and birds, and typical sort of Chinese design that is, you know, very, very vibrant and beautifully intricate. And it was one of the most beautiful temples that I've ever looked around, just simply because of the colour and the decadence and the intricacy in the design and the reflection of nature. And so we began to have a kind of a little feel into what Taoism actually is. And we were present there when they had one of their kind of ceremonies, in the Great Hall. And when I say Great Hall, it was this huge, great big temple with a massive hall that went on for probably about a quarter of a kilometre. It's like 250 meters. It was huge. And it was lined with people that, you know, came in for this ritual. And so that was when I first encountered Taoism, and I didn't really pick up the book, The Tao Te Ching, until my husband asked for it for a present, and I'd never heard of this book, and I was kind of like, okay, well, what's the Tao Te Ching? Not his usual sort of present request, I have to say, at that time, but it sparked an interest in me and him, and we were kind of reading it and sort of saying, oh, this is, you know, this is really interesting, this is fabulous. I've got that copy here now. The one that I picked up and bought for him was by a gentleman called Stephen Mitchell. So this is the Tao Te Ching that I was reading for a while. And I picked out a couple of verses really to share with you tonight, because as I said, there's 81 verses. And when we talk about the Book of the Way, when you imagine what the way is, you know, you're talking about life. You're talking about life as an individual. You're talking about life within society and within community. And you're also talking about, on the greater scale, life within the concept and the reality of the world, and what that actually means, and our place within the world. So the Tao Te Ching, as it was written down, became a kind of a philosophy and a religion from when it was written down. But actually, the ideas behind the Tao Te Ching date back as early as around 1600 BC. You know, these were ideas that were actually developed, historically recorded down anyway, as having been developed by the people, the poor people at that time, the people that actually lived on the land, and who were very, very interlinked, you know, integrated and interlinked into the way nature worked, and noticing things for themselves so that they could learn from nature and harness almost the knowledge and the wisdom of nature around them, as they noticed that, you know, for example, you know, when the trees lost all their leaves in autumn, that didn't mean that they were dying, because next spring they would just come back again. And the ideas that they struck up and the parallels that they struck up with their lives, through farming and for obviously wanting, you know, food and cultivation and the change in the seasons, the different kind of ways that energy were brought in and out, and what that meant to them, what they saw. They really read into that because they were living it. They were living very much as a part of this. No great mansions, no great ways of being able to be hidden off away from society or culture or nature itself, as there were in the dynasties, and in the bigger towns and cities. So for them, for the people that actually lived in nature, and who were living in like the rural parts of China, this became their way of life. And this, I think, is perhaps one of the reasons that it's come, the book of the way, because it's the way of people living within nature. And that's very much the essence of the whole of the Tao Te Ching. It's around living peacefully. It's around living in harmony. It's about really how you can do that as an individual and how we can do that as a species as well. So it's fascinating. And even though it was written down 2,500 years ago, and even though really the concepts maybe came from as early as 3,500, maybe 4,000 years ago, people have been living this for a while, and it was just suddenly documented down. Who's to say that it hadn't been, cultivated over thousands of years of living and responding and watching and learning from the people of rural China at that time. So although the Tao Te Ching was attributed to Lao Tzu, he was a scholar at that time, and he worked in the royal courts, and he worked in libraries, and he was very much revered as a man of wisdom. And in fact, his name Lao Tzu even means the old master, or sometimes the old boy, depending on, I suppose, whether you want to put him high on a pedestal, as was often common in China, following on from the 1600 to 1000 BC, which was when this time was being documented and written down, or whether or not you want to take it in the context of the Tao Te Ching, who would say that, in honesty, it's completely irrelevant whether Lao Tzu existed or not, because this is just the way, it's just the path. Everything just is and just will continue to be, which is kind of the essence of all 81 verses. And it's fascinating for me to really read through some of these verses and see how relevant they are to today. Although I'm not somebody who lives within nature, I have spent a long time being within nature and living in a natural environment. I spent 8 years, 5 of the 8 years that I was in Thailand, living within the jungle, and in, a very, very, on the outskirts of a very, very small Thai village, where everybody really lived at harmony with nature, as much as, they kind of do. Yeah, everybody had like a concrete house. No one was living in like a bamboo. Well, there was a couple of people that were living in bamboo huts and stuff like that. But, within the world as it stands at the moment, a concrete house, but very, very simple. No kitchens or anything like that, just stuff out on the floor, being cooked outside on barbecues, spending a lot of time cultivating their own herbs, vegetables, fruit, learning how to climb through the mountains to be able to get certain plants that they need for healing, learning how to really live within the seasons and to live with the seasonal fruits and vegetables that come at the time, learning how to cultivate and get honey without any major chemicals, anything like that, still using the old adage of smoking the bees out before getting the honey from the hive. So anyway, it basically, I kind of think that I can relate a little bit, because I did live out in nature for a while, and I do recognize that when you live in that situation, it's wise to watch what goes on around you. It's wise to learn from creatures who have seemingly a sixth sense about the way the weather's going to change, and about what to do when it gets stiflingly hot with the humidity and the heat in the high seasons. And you end up kind of just sitting and watching and contemplating a lot in that sort of weather. There really is nothing much that you can do. It literally saps all of your energy. And in a way, although that became very, very frustrating to me initially, it became one of the biggest gifts that Thailand ever gave me, was to really stop me, even though my Western mind wanted to get things done, needed to do here, needed to do there, needed to be organized, needed to go, needed to achieve, was one thing, was huge. I had to let go of that living over there. And when I read through the Tao Te Ching, I often think that one of its most powerful messages is really just about letting go. And when I compare that ideal with the idea that we've got in the Western world at the moment, where everything really is about control, when you look at the extremes that we've got at the moment with politics all over the world, it's all about control. And to have control is power. And all of that sort of stuff really just generates so many bad energies in the world as well. Not that I'm saying that to be in control of your life is a bad thing, and I'm not saying that some of the things that come out of the way the world's being run aren't wonderful and all that sort of thing. But there is definitely a sense that at the moment, the power, that hunger for power, that hunger for control, that wants to manage everything is really detrimental to our world health. And so I think, again, when I read down through the Tao Te Ching and it's all talking about just letting go and letting things be and letting things flow, I can really feel the wealth in that wisdom. I can really feel like that's exactly what we need to do a little bit. We need to just let go a little bit because everything's being pulled so tight by this need for control. And it's, it gets a bit scary. And when things start getting pulled tight, people start getting nervous because, the boundaries are closing in around them. And there's, fraction, there's tension, there's anxiety, there's worry. And we're seeing that through and across the world. So I still think, like I say, even 2,500 or 3,500 years on, the message of the Tao Te Ching is very, very relevant for today and everything that we're going through in the world. So Taoism is a religion that has developed from the Tao Te Ching, but it's not what I'm going to be talking about tonight. Taoism, as it's practiced at the moment and has been for a couple of thousand years, still has things like ritual in it, and still has things like rules and religious festivals and celebrations and those sort of things that kind of characterize it, if you like, as a religion. And when I read through the Tao Te Ching and I've read through it a few times and I've listened to different interpretations, and tonight I'm going to be referencing from a book by Dr. Wayne Dyer as well, Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, which is based on the Tao Te Ching as well. And Dr. Dyer goes through and explains from his perspective why it is that these verses are so relevant for today and how it is that we can take them into our lives and really begin to utilize the knowledge and the wealth of knowledge that was harvested from people living within nature so long ago. So I'm just going to pick out a few tonight of the verses that really touched me and that I think are kind of, I suppose, most prevalent. But I urge you to read the Tao Te Ching. It can be quite hard going. I'm not gonna lie. It can be quite hard going. There's been a couple of times when I've really had to read over and over and just think, what? What is he going on about there? But I'm going to start tonight with verse 52. I'm not going to start at the beginning. That sounds too easy. But one of the things about the Tao as well is that although it's written in 81 verses, you can pick it up and you can open this book at any page and you can learn. It doesn't have to be read chapter after chapter, verse after verse in chronological order. And this is why I start on verse 52, because it starts, in the beginning was the Tao. All things issue from it. All things return to it. To find the origin, trace back to the manifestations. When you recognize the children and find the mother, you will be free of sorrow. If you close your mind in judgments and traffic with desires, your heart will be troubled. If you keep your mind from judging and aren't led by the senses, your heart will find peace. Seeing into darkness is clarity. Knowing how to yield is strength. Use your own light and return to the source of light. This is called practicing eternity. And one of the things that the Tao always does is bring you back to the idea that nothing is permanent, everything is in a constant state of flow, and everything as it is right here, right now, whether it's working in your mind or not, is an absolute perfection throughout. And I love that thought. I love that thought. It's a thought that was also given to me by the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which I've spoken about before on this Happy Guru show. I've talked about how it gave me a kind of a freedom to be able to understand that I matter implicitly, and yet it matters not. As a person, it's imperative that I'm alive, because it's like what 1 in 7.2 or 7.3, whatever the statistics of numbers of people there are in the world are now. We are all absolutely unique individuals, and there's so much science coming out about that. I read the other day about this thing called a talents strip, which basically says that the probability of you being born as you are with the talents that you have, and that's just taking just the talents, was it's like 1 in 700 million or something like that. It was like ridiculous, and it's like 1 in 400 million chance of you being you, born to the parents that you've been born to, on the date that you've been born to. And there's all these crazy figures. If you start Googling, it just blows your mind, because you're like, whoa, there's no reason not to believe that you aren't here for a very, very specific reason. And the idea then of why are we here? If I'm so special and if I'm so unique, then why am I here? This for me is the reason behind life. This for me is the idea and the purpose, your dharma, if you like. It's to find out exactly why it is that you're here, exactly why you have come in at this time with everything that you have to offer. Why is it that the world needs you? More importantly, what can you recognize in yourself that the world needs to know about? I think, so like starting on verse 52, in the beginning was the Tao, all things issue from it, all things return to it. We're just talking about that ultimate oneness again, talking about forever, and everything that's come from, part from the past, and everything that's going to be in the future, everything that is now, all really being one thing. To find the origin, trace back to the manifestations. So to find the beginning, to find the source of it all, just keep moving backwards, to when things start. So just looking at the beginning of anything will show you the origin of everything, I think, is the idea here, right? This is my interpretation. I'm reading from the Tao Te Ching, the translation by Stephen Mitchell, and this is my interpretation of verse 52. So, when you recognize the children and find the mother, you will be free of sorrow. So this is a couple of lines that I pondered over for a while, because as a mum, I kind of thought, oh, right, well, this seems significant to me somehow. This seems like I should perhaps take note here. When you recognize the children and find the mother, you'll be free of sorrow. And I believe that these three sentences, are talking about unconditional love. When you find the mother, when you recognize the children, so when you know a person, anyone, we've all been children. It's the way that we come into this world. Whether or not you are fortunate enough to have an amazing relationship with your parents, whether you never knew them at all, you have been born from something, from the feminine, from the divine, from source. You have been brought, you have been manifest into this world. And when you recognize that, you recognize that we all share that same beginning in life, if you like, and you find the mother, you recognize then the source. If you recognize that we all come from the same sort of origin, and that we've all been born in the same way into different circumstances, but we've all come in the same way, been conceived, grown in a stomach, grown in a woman's stomach, in her womb, and then been born. You find the mother, you will be free of sorrow, because you recognize then that it was through love that you have come through, through the feminine, through the divine feminine, through that creativity. And that is the nature of the mother. So the idea, we've talked about the feminine energy before in the program, and we've talked about it being such an inherent part of all of us, whether you're male or female. You have these two dual energies, masculine energy and a feminine energy. And the feminine energy is very much the creative source. It's the nurturing. It's the, bringing about of creation. And the masculine is really the energy behind that, the energy that powers that onwards. You can't live one without the other. You can't have, it must be, it's like kind of the yin and the yang, right? The yang being the masculine, the yin being the feminine. And yet the duality is necessary for either one of them to be. Without the yang, you wouldn't have the yin. Without the yin, you wouldn't have the yang. And it's all that kind of that the paradox of the duality of life and the duality of everything that we see around us that has raised as many eyebrows and questions about life and throughout philosophy and religion and just general wandering even down the pub sometimes, about what it's all for. So I think these three lines, when you recognize the children and you find the mother, you will be free of sorrow. It's like when you recognize your divinity and you understand where you've come from, you can't hold on to anguish. You can't hold on to sorrow because you recognize that you are part of everything and everything is part of you. And that's the oneness that it's talking about. One of the reasons that I wanted to start with this verse really is so that, these fundamental principles of the Tao Te Ching come through when we begin to think and get our minds around what it is that Lao Tzu is passing down from generations of knowledge and generations of experience and wisdom. The next section says, if you close your mind in judgments and traffic with desires, your heart will be troubled. If you keep your mind from judging and aren't led by the senses, your heart will find peace. Now, again, I drew so many parallels with this paragraph with my yoga teaching, with, the philosophy of yoga and the ideas that, allowing and really not judging, contemplating rather than coming in with an ego-led idea of what should and shouldn't be. When you begin to feed into that ideas of what should and shouldn't be, when you believe in the judgments that you're making, you're allowing ego to take over and you are allowing a predisposition to cloud the vision in front of you, the experience that you're having right there. So if you close your mind in judgments, that's what it's saying. If you only want to look one way, if you've closed your mind already and you're saying that this is the way things should be done, this is the way I accept things, this is, the one and only way, if you like. I don't accept any other variant. I don't accept any other difference in the way that life should be lived, for example. And traffic with desires. So push on, traffic, I think, means like, pushing on, like congesting almost with desire, with wants and with needs and with, requests and all these sorts of things that constantly feed the want of the ego, want to judge, want to have a perspective, want for the control, want for the power, want for the, the understanding, all those sorts of things. You're really leaning heavily into the ego there. And as yoga tells us, or the principles of the yoga system tell us, as a philosophy, that if you are going to judge everything, if you're going to let the ego take over the mind, then you will find unhappiness, because there will always be something that challenges your judgments, always, because again, we're back to the fact that everybody's unique. Nobody's going to be doing it your way, and you're not going to be doing it everybody else's way. There will always be similarities, there will always be like-mindedness and all that sort of thing, but you will always do something your way, and somebody else will always do it theirs, and that's just fact. If you begin to kind of just accept that fundamental, real easy, simple way of just, okay, yeah, my mum's going to do it her way and I'm going to do it mine. How can I judge my mum? She's taught me everything, but at the same time, she's taught me, and yet I've done it my own way. I was watching my daughters doing scrambled eggs. I'm teaching them how to cook at the moment, and I'm sort of saying, right, okay, put your butter in, and mix it around the pan, or, melt it down first, mix it around the pan so that the egg doesn't get stuck. And they're just doing it their way. It doesn't mean their scrambled eggs are wrong. It doesn't mean to say it don't taste as good or anything like that. It just means to say that they're listening to what I'm saying, they're processing it their way, and they're affecting it their way. So, it's everybody's going to do that. And whether it be something as simple and as non-effectively like as scrambling eggs, or whether it be something and as important as say, the rules and regulations that we all live by, it's very, very important to understand that no two minds are going to think the same way, and accepting that and accepting the beauty in that and the opportunity in that as well. So it says, if you close your mind in judgments and traffic with desires, your heart will be troubled, because you're always going to hit things. You're always going to come up against things that don't quite sit perhaps as well as you would like them to. challenge your own view, challenge you slightly. And so your heart will be troubled. There will be some level of self-doubt. There will be a little level of perhaps confusion, or, that's really not how I feel or how I think. So, is it wrong? Is it right? What's going on, type thing. But if you keep your mind from judging and aren't led by the senses, your heart will find peace. So when we think of the senses, we're thinking about eyes, our vision. We're thinking about our ears. We're thinking about what we hear. Again, all these things are open to perception, right? What you see, you judge. Something as simple as color. I was talking to my girls the other day, and they were saying that they want their room decorated in a turquoise. And as they describe this turquoise to me, I'm thinking to myself, well, I think I've got duck egg blue that they want then. And I'm picking up things. I'm saying, what do you think about this? And then, yeah, turquoise. And I'm like, well, that's not really turquoise. That's duck egg blue. So, Mum, that's turquoise. And, at which point I kind of stop and I'm like, okay, so you want turquoise, and change the subject and carry on, because why am I arguing? Why is it important? If I think it's duck egg blue, if they think it's turquoise, it matters not in the grand scale of things. All that really matters is that we match the colour with the paint that we're going to get to do their room. There's no point to keep arguing. They're entitled to their vision, their perception, the way that they see things, built on their own experiences, and I'm entitled to mine. The fact that we have different names for them really matters not. We're both on the same page. In fact, we've identified the colour that they want. And I think this is what this is saying. If you keep your mind from judging and aren't led by the senses, your heart will find peace. Once you understand that if it's all down to perception and everybody's perception is different, and you just have to find the middle ground of understanding, right? That would be the middle ground, the understanding. Like I say, them showing me an idea of the colour that they want, and me showing them one, and finding out that they're one in the same thing. So we understand one another. We know where we're both coming from there. Then your heart will find peace. And as long as you don't push and push and push your point of view, then, it's easy to just move on from there, having rectified that situation, and job done. I can go and buy the paint. It's all good. The next, the final part of this 52nd verse says, seeing into darkness is clarity. Knowing how to yield is strength. Use your own light and return to the source of light. This is called practicing eternity. So I love this last passage. This is another reason I wanted to start with this one. Seeing into darkness is clarity. I believe this is talking about looking into and accepting and recognizing the depth of mankind. I may be going a little bit deep with it. I've read it a few times, and I kind of feel like seeing into darkness is clarity. Is like, it's about accepting that the darkness, in so many ways throughout art and song and poetry and even the representation of color, we think of darkness as being a very negative place. People are scared of the dark. The boogeyman lives in the dark and all that sort of thing. But actually, darkness is just a place that has light absent, right? If you kind of put it in that perspective, it doesn't quite feel so scary. But seeing into darkness is clarity, accepting that other side, instead of just thinking, oh, go for the light, go for the light. It's actually accepting that dark side brings an immense amount of acceptance, clarity, right, to the fact that there are always these two polar opposites. There always is duality. There has to be, to have the middle part, which is the kind of the way, if you like. You have to have the darkness to be able to have the light. Otherwise, there would be no comparison. You have to have the light because it's the opposite of darkness, and you have to kind of have that way. You have to have either or to be able to have the center, the middle way, the middle ground. So seeing into the darkness is clarity says to me that it's just about accepting that it's not all about being good. It's not all about being perfect. It's not all about having everything. It's actually about recognizing that we are this duality, and it's part of our nature, and not just our nature, but everything. And that gives you a certain sense of clarity as to your place in the world, and how to accept things, and how to live, and how to be tolerant, for example, right? Knowing how to yield is strength. It's the second line down on the final paragraph of the 52nd verse. Knowing how to yield is strength. That there is a strength in letting go. That there is a strength in saying, you know what? It's fine. I step back. I move away. I yield. I give it up. not constantly driving to have, must have, feeling as though you need to defend, feeling as though, you know, if you're being challenged, you must rise up to that challenge. Knowing how to yield is a strength. Being able to step back and say, it's okay, it's fine, enables you to put yourself back in a place of control, ironically, because actually you step back and you step away and you say, it doesn't matter to me anymore. And so I move out of that want, that place of want, that place of need, that place of desire. And you move back into a place of strength and into a place of power, into a place of control, paradoxically, because you then are taking away the desire, the want, the need that is pushing and driving and almost sort of catapulting you forward into something, you know, when you get there, it might not be enough. And so to yield and to let go of it actually is the strongest thing to do, because it's also saying that that thing that I want, that thing that I need, that thing that I desire, I don't need, I don't want, I desire, I don't desire, I don't need it. And that is yielding to attain strength. It says, then use your own light and return to the source of light. So I think, again, this is just about going within. You know, as you yield to find strength, so you sturdy yourself within and you say to yourself, you know, actually, it's about me. It's about where I go with this. Using your own light, using your intuition, right? The light, we always have the little light bulb above the head to invoke a sense of intelligence or a bright idea, something like this. And I think that using your own light to return to the source of light is about using your inner guidance, using your intuition, using your soul, using your spirit to be able to return to the source, to be able to move into a place of divinity, of oneness. You know, that to me really is a better explanation of divinity, is just oneness, of everything being as one and everything existing exactly as it is for the greater good, and just having to go with that flow. You know, there's no, for me anyway, as the individual that I am, living in the time that I am, there's really no point in thinking about what the next couple of thousand of years will look like. You know, I've learned that not to look too far into the future at all, because if I look too far into the future, I begin to kind of move out of this sense of peace and calm, and will dive into worry quite easily because of the state of the planet, for example. What am I leaving for my children and my grandchildren and all that sort of stuff? Just to take a very kind of simple, off the top of my head example. But when I stop and I go inward and I recognize myself and I look at who I am and what it is that I'm here to do, so returning, like using my own light, and recognizing that as I return to the source of light, so then I am reflecting that back out. That's, you know, really when I find my power. And the last line, this is what called practicing eternity. If we're all doing this, if this is happening as it's happening in nature within all of us, this is practicing eternity. This is, and practice is like kind of making perfect, right? Practicing is evolving. Practicing is manifesting constantly. And so, you know, when you're practicing eternity, you are then bringing the present peace and happiness that you're developed, that you found, into a forever, into everything, again, through this connection of oneness. So that's like how I'd like to introduce you to the Tao Te Ching, the 52nd verse. In the beginning, there was the Tao, is the first line, and then at the end, this is called practicing eternity. And I kind of like the way that's been written out as well. It kind of, you know, for the 52nd verse, which is not either in the middle or towards the end or anything like that, you know, it's actually just randomly out there, and yet so beautifully constructed. So yeah, so that was the first verse that I wanted to introduce you to. The second one, I'm going all the way back now. I'll say all the way back, but back towards the beginning more, for verse 14. So verse 14 reads, look and it can't be seen. Listen and it can't be heard. Reach and it can't be grasped. Above it isn't bright. Below it isn't dark. Seamless, unnameable, it returns to the realm of nothing. Form that includes all forms. Image without an image. Subtle beyond all conception. Approach it and there is no beginning. Follow it and there is no end. You can't know it, but you can be it. at ease in your own life. Just realize where you came from. This is the essence of wisdom. So again, I mean, this is exactly how it's written out. It's kind of like, what? Initially, what? I don't really understand. And then the more you read it, the more you begin to understand that, again, like I say, it's all about this ultimate flow, about this way. It's about the way that always was and always is, and the way it kind of just keeps going. And it will keep going, irrespective of anything that you think you're doing to change it. In fact, the only way that you can change it is by being a part of it. And expressing yourself. And that is, again, back to the whole kind of point of life, that's why you're here, to express your absolute 100% authentic self. And this is what I think this is kind of touching in a little bit on verse 14. So it says, look and it can't be seen, listen and it can't be heard, reach and it can't be grasped. Now, for me, this kind of feels almost about like the essence of everything, which is energy, right? When we look at quantum physics, and again, I've spoken about this before, when we look at quantum physics and we look inside the atom and inside the Bohr atom that's inside the atom, and inside the Bohr atom, there is only energy. I'll say only, but I mean, that's amazing, right? When you break everything down, actually inside, there's nothing. There's no seed. There's nothing. There's just energy, this consciousness. And so look and it can't be seen, listen and it can't be heard, reach and it can't be grasped, I think is talking about that. I think it's talking about the fundamental essence of everything is invisible. It can't be seen. It can't be defined. It can't be, there's no noise to it. There's no structure to it. You couldn't hold it. You can't hear it. You can't see it. And then it goes on to even talk about even perhaps the other restrictions, if you like, that we might put on this to try to describe it, the descriptions and the words that we might use to try to invoke what it is that we mean when we talk about it, when actually the concept is really something that you have to just get your head around a little bit to be able to let go of any judgments, let go of any descriptions, to be able to just accept what it is that you inherently know. And you see, when I believe that when you do that, that's when you begin to really connect in with spirit, because you really, once you've accepted that you are nothing but consciousness manifest in a certain way, and you really accept that, then you recognize that, well, then it can't just be me, can it? It must be everything, and it must be the plants, and it must be water, and it must be the other people that I see and I know. It can't, I'm no different. I am one of the 10,000 things that, as it's talked about in the Tao Te Ching. And so it says again, above it isn't bright, below it isn't dark, seamless, unnameable, it returns to the realm of nothing. Form that includes all forms, image without an image, subtle beyond all conception. So I like to think above it isn't bright, below it isn't dark, is almost talking about the conception, the idea, of a heaven and a hell, if you like. Again, this idea that light and dark are polar opposites that are like a negative and a positive. Above it isn't bright, which is very true, because me, for example, now it's 9 o'clock at night in England. It's dark outside, so above it isn't bright. It's absolutely dark all the way through, because once we lose the sunlight, the universe takes over and we become suddenly enshrouded in this darkness for half of our 24 hours, half of our day, depending on the season. And below it isn't dark. There's no darkness as you go down, because if there's no lightness as you go up, you haven't got those polar opposites. It just isn't like that. We've constructed this in our mind as a method of understanding, as a way of trying to be able to satisfy the need to understand, which of course is driven by the ego. If you let go of the need to understand, then you let go of the ego's want to find its place, recognize itself, which is the nature of the ego, to actually say, I am a thing. And this is me, and absolutely, definitely, this is what I represent. And that is inherently the ego. And it's important to have it, but at the same time, when it holds unbendingly to to the belief systems that have been engineered for you by other people and experiences and all those sorts of things, then you can understand that it doesn't come from an authentic you, because it isn't something that you've generated for yourself. Ego has been generated by the experiences that you've had, the people that you've met, the thoughts that, other people, the talks that other people, the words that other people have used and given to you, and shared and all that sort of thing, and how you then process them. So it's not really authentic you, the ego. Authentic you would be the soul, would be the spirit, would be that place that resonates almost in the heart center. Seamless, unnameable, it returns to the realm of nothing. So again, it's not something that you can grasp. It's not something that you can touch. It's not something that you can hold. It's not something that you can hear. It's seamless. It's unnameable. It returns to the realm of nothing. No thing, right? Form that includes all forms. Image without an image. Subtle beyond all conception. So form that includes all forms. This, I think, again, we're talking about energy. Form that includes all forms. The form of energy is everything that you see. Everything that you see has been manifest through conscious thought, through creation, right? Which is, again, like part of the divine feminine energy that runs through us all. And when I say us all, I'm talking about everything. Masculine and feminine within plants, masculine and feminine within elements, masculine and feminine within humanity, of course, now animals, insects, all those sorts of things. So form that includes all forms is everything has this, right? This is what the Tao is saying, that everything has this. Image without an image. So again, when we look inside the Bohr atom and we find nothing, but on the outside there's a construct, that would be the construct of the consciousness, the construct of the energy would be the atom. But fundamentally, it's just a construct. It's just kind of like, putting on clothes. That's the way you look today. That's the way it's manifest today. It will change and it will look different throughout. Image without an image is recognizing, if you like, that there is no one form for anything. Everything is changeable. Everything is different. Everything will shift and become something else as the energy is released back into the oneness of it all. And then it says subtle beyond all conception. So again, it's so huge that it's almost not even there. It's everything. It's everywhere. Subtle beyond conception. It couldn't be more subtle. The essence of all of us is everywhere, and yet never we see it. I can't, you never has a form. It's not something that you can see. It's not something that you can hear. It's not something you can recognize. It just is. And that, again, is the beauty of it all. And another reason to accept your oneness, you're part of it all. Approach it and there is no beginning. Follow it and there is no end. So again, we're talking about this absolutely irrespective of time. No timeline is needed. There's no reason to think that there will be a beginning and an end. What has and will be are the same. What has been and what will be are the same things. What is going on now, it's all part of the same thing. That time is kind of cyclical and circular on a path that just will always join up, not having a beginning, not having an end. You can't know it, but you can be it. So this is I think where I've got that. This one line, I suppose, is actually where I've got the idea that we're talking about energy here. You can't know it, but you can be it. Right, so you can't know energy. You can feel it and all those sorts of things, but you can be it. So you can feel through being it. You can feel through that recognition, at ease in your own life. So once you begin to accept that and recognize that, so you can really let go of the preconception again of ego, that you are something, that you are someone, and that those two things are defined by the qualifications that you have, your upbringing, your financial status, whether or not you're in a relationship, what the color your hair is, whether you're the right size body, whether you're the right height, all those sorts of things. Once you recognize that actually fundamentally underneath it all, we're all the same thing, and that's undefinable, then all those things that try to define us, that we've brought in as constructs to define who we are, really become absolutely obsolete. and we just don't need them. And once you recognize that, you become at ease. There's no pressure on you to be or act or have anything that you're not or that you don't already own. You know, whatever's not right here, right now, if you want it, then set your intention to go and get it, and it will come to you. So it gives you this ease in your own life. Just realize where you come from. This is the essence of wisdom. So the last two lines, just realize where you come from. This is the essence of the wisdom. So it's asking you to recognize that you are energy, recognize what energy is, recognize that everything that you do is because of it, everything that you have is because of it, and you will become fundamentally wise because you will begin to realize how that knowledge can shift who you are and what you achieve and why you're here. Again, it's that whole why you are here thing that it feels the most important to me. And this is the essence of wisdom. So again, asking you to really let go of all your preconceived ideas of what perhaps source or God or energy or higher consciousness, whatever it is, universe, however it is that you'd like to express, letting go of the preconceptions that you have there, recognizing that it is nothing that can be defined, recognizing that you are nothing that can be defined, and recognizing that once you let go of any sort of definition that you have given yourself, that's when the real innate wisdom will come, because then you open your mind, you let go of the conditioning, you let go of the rules, the regulations, the expectations, all those sorts of things, and you just are. And when you just are and you're just in a place of being, it's obviously a lot easier to be, because you're not judging yourself and you're not thinking about what perhaps you should be doing or shouldn't be doing, and what you should and shouldn't have, whether you're being treated fairly or not, whether there's so many things that we go through as humans. But when you begin to let go of it all a little bit, you can begin to see that actually to let go of it is the only course of action, because to stay in it is keeping you in a sense of lack, keeping you in a sense of feeling as though you don't have it all already, when fundamentally you are it all, if you like. Right? So that was verse 14. Now I'm going to move on to the book by Dr. Wayne Dyer, because a lot of the things that he talks about in here, change your thoughts, change your life, living the wisdom of the Tao, a lot of the things that he talks about in here, and this is an extensive book, it's like 500 odd pages or something, maybe even more, 400 pages. And if you listen to it, I've listened to it in audiobook as well. It's over 9 hours. So it's a big commitment. But his takes on the Tao are very interesting. And I love some of the ways that he has spoken about his interpretation and what he believes. Now, he studied the Tao Te Ching he studied the Tao Te Ching for over a year, literally working on each verse, like every day, like sitting with one verse and allowing himself to really think about it, to really feel into it, doing research around different translations of the Tao Te Ching and interpretations of the Tao Te Ching, and trying to kind of find like a middle road, balancing place between all of it, to be able to comment and to be able to learn himself. So he actually studied through the Tao Te Ching for a year, and took himself off, and he says in the beginning of the book that he spent one whole day at least on each of the verses, getting up first thing in the morning and reading it, allowing the knowledge to kind of wash over him, and allowing himself to really think and interpret what it is that he was reading. So from change your thoughts, change your life, I'm now going to read the 64th verse. So again, I'm just chopping around, but these are the verses that I feel really called out to me to share. So this is the 64th verse, and Wayne Dyer talks about this being living by being here and now, which again really relates in beautifully with the yoga work that I do and the philosophy that I study through my yoga practice. It's all about being in the present. The first words on the pages of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali are and now we begin. That's literally how it starts, because it doesn't matter when now is. It's all about just starting. It's all about just beginning from wherever you are, in whatever situation, whatever it is that you want to learn. You've just got to start then and there, whatever. So it says, living by being here now. And this is the 64th verse. What is at rest is easily managed. What is not yet manifest is easy to prevent. The brittle is easily shattered. The small is easily scattered. Act before things exist. Manage them before there is disorder. Remember, a tree that fills a man's embrace grows from a seedling. A tower 9 stories high starts with 1 brick. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Act and destroy it, grasp it and lose it. The sage does not act, and so is not defeated. It does not grasp and therefore does not lose. People usually fail when they are on the verge of success, so give as much care at the end as at the beginning. Then there will be no failure. The sage does not treasure what is difficult to attain. He does not collect precious things. He learns not to hold on to ideas. He helps the 10,000 things find their own nature, but does not venture to lead them by the nose. So a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step is perhaps one of the most famous lines to come out of the Tao Te Ching. In fact, I'd heard this line well before I'd been to Vietnam and discovered a Taoist temple, well before, even knowing about the book, the Tao Te Ching. And I never even heard of it before my husband asked for me. So, but this, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. I kind of remember, I think at school or something, people sort of saying, look, you've just got to try. That's the idea, right? You've just got to try. And everything is possible. Anything is possible. A journey with 1,000 miles is possible when it's 1 foot after the other, which again, I love because of my coaching. And this is very much how I coach. It's just small steps, empowering, infusing, exciting. And obviously this really leads into this. So it says, what is at rest is easily managed. What is not yet manifest is easy to prevent. The brittle is easily shattered. The small is easily scattered. And I think this kind of first bit is talking about not worrying about anything too much. Like if the tighter you hold on to something, the more likely you are to suffer when you let it go, the more likely it is to break as well, right? The brittle is easily shattered. Something that is hard and fast is easily broken. Whereas something that is, flexible and bendy and malleable will not break. It will just change form to accommodate, right? And I think that's what the Tao is saying here, is to just really change form to accommodate, and be for that moment. What is at rest is easily managed. Of course, if something is asleep already, you don't have to do too much to keep it quiet. You don't have to do too much to exercise it or feed it or anything like that. It's easily managed. But also that to me is a reflection of society now and how we all kind of need to wake up, like what is at rest is easily managed. To me, that's like, absolutely wake up consciousness on this planet. We're killing our planet. We have weirdos in power all over the world, for want of a better phrase. I just, sometimes I watch the news and I just, or I'm reading a paper, or I'm reading something online, and I just can't believe what I'm reading, and I'm like, how is this even possible? How is it even possible this is able to happen in a world that is so intelligent, that has the possibility and the intelligence and the creativity to build such amazing things in terms of technology and, AI, artificial intelligence and stuff. And then, all the different things that you see creatively. How is it possible that we live in a world where so many people are displaced from their homes, are living in poverty, are living in, in starvation, that children are going out, without education, without food, without water? How is this possible in this day and age? But this first line is very telling in that sense. What is at rest is easily managed. I feel like we're at rest. I feel like, generally speaking, we're so distracted by things that we are really easy to manage. I take the example, of my kids, like when they get tech time and they're allowed on, my phone or a little iPad or something that we've got, they are very easily managed. Sit down, stay there, don't move. I've got it. If I give them my phone, I've got it guaranteed for at least an hour before they're like, oh, I want a drink, I want a snack, or I need the toilet. But guaranteed that they will sit there not doing anything and being easily managed for that period of time, because they're just sat. They're just distracted. They are, for them, they're loving it. They're enjoying it. They're playing Minecraft and that sort of thing. The mind is being stimulated. The body, not so much at all, fingers, thumbs, but the mind is being stimulated, but in a way of practicality almost, no creativity, which is, being able to be creative enables you to create every day that you live. And when you can create every day that you live, you can change situations so that you're living your best day every day. So for me, what is at rest is easily managed is a very telling line about how our society will be if we do not keep growing, if we regress rather than progress, and then it says what is not yet manifest is easy to prevent. If you don't just go out there and do it, a million things will come up to stop you from doing it. Now, I've been living this recently, like working on getting projects out and getting websites done and all that sort of stuff. And I really recognize the truth in this. What is not yet manifest is easy to prevent. Because until you sit down and do it, literally until the action kicks in, it's never done. It's the furthest thing away from you. It's super easy to prevent because a million different things will jump in midway. I was saying to my producer and my tech guy who's helping me out doing everything, and he's being so great. He's been so patient with me. But I was saying to him today, if I don't find the time to do what I need to do, there are a million things that will just take up my life and take over my life, in fact, so that I never have the time to do it. And that's because of all the roles that I wear and, all the hats that I wear, the roles that I play. And all of that is fine because it's absolutely my life and I love it and I live it and it fills me with joy every day. But there is a lot of frustration when I need something to change, and yet so many things will prevent it because I haven't actually sat down. And that's literally sounds like a paradox in itself. The fact that I sit down to action something just sounds a little bit crazy, right? But I have to. I have to do this. And I think this is kind of what the second line is saying, that what is not yet manifest is easy to prevent. Until you do it, it's never done and it won't be done. And it's easy not to do it. Like if you don't sit down or you don't stand up or you don't get on basically and do it. So that is what I believe that second line is sort of saying. And again, like I said, if brittle is easy to shatter. If you're too rigid, then you break easier. The small is easily scattered. If you don't believe in yourself, if you don't have, I think this is what it means anyway, by talking about the small, I think it's talking about self-doubt. That kind of, when you're self-doubtful and you just hide away, don't you? You make yourself small. When you're scared of anything, for example, fear makes you play small, right? And it says the small is easily scattered. You need focus, you need drive, you need action to move forward. That's just a given, kind of in anything, and if you think about the way that thoughts, action and manifestation all work, that's a given. So the small is easily scattered is like if you have the fear, if you have this self-doubt, then you'll never be able to kind of pull yourself together. You're easily scattered out. You've got to pull yourself together and make yourself bigger and stronger so that you can face that fear, so that you can get on, so that you can progress, and so that you can live the life that you were born to live. Then it says on the second paragraph, act before things exist. Manage them before there is disorder. So I love this first line, act before things exist, because this to me is the law of attraction again. Act before things exist. Believe that it's there, act as though it's there, it will come to you. Okay, it's one of the fundamental ways of being able to manifest, irrespective of anything else that you think, you believe you need to have to be able to get that thing that you want in your life to come to you. So act before things exist. Believe that you are, if you look at like the way kids role play, believe that you're a pop star before you are a pop star, because you'll never be a pop star otherwise. It was a very, very sort of simple example, but one that I certainly, sort of lived as a child, if you like. I spent hours with a hairbrush in front of a mirror, singing away to myself, making up dance routines, practicing photo shoots in the mirror and all this sort of thing, with the idea that because that's what I wanted to do. For all of my childhood, I wanted to be a star. I wanted to sing, I wanted to dance, and I wanted to do all that sort of thing. And then self-doubt kicked in, made me play small, and I scattered. That never really happened. And I've had little dip-ins to this and that and the other throughout my life. And to be honest with you, now I understand why it didn't happen. And I recognize that perfection in the Tao and the perfection in the way that everything works in harmony with your greater good. Because that's kind of not what I would like to have had in my life as I look back. Like, yeah, I suppose the money would have been fantastic, but the invasion of privacy, the way that all that sort of stuff's gone, it's just not for me. And I think act before things exist is kind of saying that, but if you do want something, if you want to manifest something, then you become what it is that you want to manifest. So acting out, role playing what it is that you want in your life, for example, and really feeling into what it looks like, what it feels like, what the reality of that would be, how you would manage, and all those sorts of things. And then, it will bring it to you. Manage them before there is disorder. So again, manage them before there is disorder. Remember, a tree that fills a man's embrace grows from a seedling. So managing before there is disorder, I think really just means self-discipline, because when there's not self-discipline, there is this tendency for within mankind, or certainly within the experience of people that I know from all different walks of life, backgrounds, ages, all that sort of thing. If there is no discipline, then there is a certain amount of disorder in life. And if you think that, the majority of us want to feel like we're going somewhere, that we have a purpose, that we're moving forward in a direction that is profitable for us in some way, we don't want there to be any disorder. Disorder actually goes against that idea. Manage them before there is disorder. If you manage it all before that kicks in, then it won't be there. It won't be that. And then it says, remember, a tree that fills a man's embrace grows from a seedling. A tower 9 stories high starts with 1 brick. Journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. I don't think we really need to go over that. That for me is just like, again, the beautiful text, the beautiful way that the Chinese express themselves in relation to nature and the natural world, that everything starts small and grows into be something amazing, that we have all started as tiny little cells coming and splitting into one little person, and growing, and everything is as it's supposed to be. We all start small. We all start buried underneath the earth, striving for the sunshine, striving for the light. If you're going to grow tall and strong and, make an impression on the face of the world, literally like a tall building, it starts with 1 brick. It starts with 1 movement. It starts with 1 action. And the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Of course, one of the most famous lines of the Tao Te Ching. And as I said before, one that I'd heard before I'd even heard what the Tao Te Ching was. It all kind of ties in together. So then it says, act and destroy it, grasp it and lose it. The sage does not act and so is not defeated. He does not grasp and therefore does not lose. People usually fail when they are on the verge of success. So give as much care at the end as at the beginning. Then there will be no failure. So act and destroy it, grasp it and lose it. It's almost about holding on. This for me, again, I feel like every time I read the Tao, it's all about letting go and letting things be and letting things just happen and allowing, doing by not doing, which is another famous theory of living that came out of the Tao Te Ching. The idea of doing but not doing. You're doing through not doing, just allowing, just permitting everything to flow naturally the way it's supposed to be. And that, that's, again, when I think like that, I feel so free, when you let go of things, act and destroy it. If I just let go and I don't act to do or act to control or act to have or, any of those things, then it will just be. If I try to change something, then I'm going to ruin it. If I get involved in something something that is already on its path, that is already flowing, then I'm gonna change that, and I'll, whatever it was on course to be, it will be have been destroyed because I have intercepted and changed it, and done it my way and influenced it with my ego and my wants and my needs for control and all those sorts of things. And so, again, about just letting go and letting be, manage them before there is disorder. Sorry, grasp it and lose it. So again, trying to hold on to something too tight, trying to grasp it, trying to own it, trying to have it, is only to let it free, is only to let it go. The sage does not act, and so is not defeated. He does not grasp, and therefore does not lose. So again, that's just explaining basically the top two lines. People usually fail when they are on the verge of success. So give as much care at the end as at the beginning. Then there will be no failure. So people usually fail when they're on the verge of success. I think it's, again, I was talking about this today. It's kind of like, you get these challenges come up. I recently achieved something and was so super thrilled. I was buzzing. I could hardly go to sleep. It was like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning by the time I went to bed and tried to get some sleep. I was just buzzing from the whole thing. But just as I felt like I was getting into this, into this thing, and I'd achieved what I'd set out to achieve, a whole heap of other stuff comes on top, and you're left thinking, oh, okay. Can't sit back, can't rest too much, got to get on, got to get on. And it is that feeling of, oh, I thought I'd done it, and then I really haven't. Actually, I've really got loads more to do now, perhaps more than actually I just was celebrating, or celebrating myself for doing. So I think that's this. People usually fail when they're on the verge of success, is because if you don't keep trying and keep, if you see success as being the end goal, and you don't keep trying to get there because actually you can see it's coming closer and closer to you, and you just feel like, oh, it's inevitable, then it will all fall away because you lose the energy in the idea of expecting. You lose the push, you lose the drive, you lose the idea of completing the circle, if you like. And just literally before it's about to complete, and then it just all falls away. So I think that's what that's talking about. So give as much care at the end as at the beginning. Make sure you maintain that positive energy, or that energy, that driving force, all the way through, and then there will be no failure. Then, as long as you maintain it, as long as you keep going on it, as long as you kind of flatlining all the way through on it, then there will be no failure. There can't be, because of the nature of failure. If you're cruising through and you're just maintaining, you're neither growing nor sinking, and there is no failure. If you grow and then you come back down again, then, you feel like you might have failed. But this way, if you just allow it all to go, and if you just allow yourself to put in the whole way through, then there will be no failure. You will continue to manifest what it is that you're interested in manifesting, and what it is that you've been working hard for. So then the final passage says, the sage does not treasure what is difficult to attain. He does not collect precious things. He learns not to hold on to ideas. He helps the 10,000 things find their own nature, but does not venture to lead them by the nose. So the first line, the sage does not treasure what is difficult to attain. He does not collect precious things. So I think it's certainly in the Western world, we believe that the amount of work that you put in there is a worth attached to it in some way, right? The sage does not treasure what is difficult to attain. So he's not holding on to something. He's not coveting it, even though he's worked really, really hard to get that. Excuse me. It's a little bit dry. So even though he's worked really, really hard to get that, if you're holding on to it like it's something precious, because it's taken so much hard work, you begin to, again, it's that control, isn't it? It's that need for control. So the sage does not treasure what is difficult to attain. He does not collect precious things. It's about recognizing that almost it was the journey was more important than the destination. That the work that you put into getting what you want was the thing where was the experience where the lesson is, and where you can really begin to recognize who you are, rather than recognizing who you are through the ultimate result, through the end result, for the reciprocation of whatever it is. If you know, whatever the businesses that you do, for example, say you're selling something, you know, it, if you let go of the want and the need for that, even though you've got it, it becomes less important. And it then goes on to say, he does not collect precious things, because everything is one. Everything is precious in its own way. The collection of it, again, is just to lean into that ego and to want to have and to hold. He learns not to hold on to ideas. So even the thoughts in his mind, I'm not going to get too carried away with them. I'm not going to pinpoint them down. This is not, it's just there flowing in and leaving and going out again. He learns not to hold on to ideas. He helps the 10,000 things find their own nature, but does not venture to lead them by the nose. So this is somebody, or an idea that if you accept this oneness, then you know that your place in it is just to be in it. Your place is not to guide, direct, or to own, or to chaperone, or to divert, or any of those things. Your place is literally to hold space for this to happen, the same way that people are holding space or have held space for you. But does not venture to lead them by the nose. Because when you think about, buffalo, I see buffalo in the fields, and they have these big rings in their nose, and they're being dragged along. That buffalo is stubborn. The reason that they decided to stick a hole in their nose is because it's one of the most sensitive parts on their area, on their bodies, which is sad. We won't get into that. But the idea is to affect the greatest amount of mental drive to shift forward. So when you pull a cow by the nose, it really has no choice. It's very painful, and it's being led, it's being taken. But if you are allowing something to find its own nature, for example, then there's no reason to have that control over it. There's no reason to try to change the dynamic or shift it so that you have an outcome. It just is, it just flows, and kind of that's that. So this was the 64th verse of the Tao Te Ching, living by being here now. And Wayne Dyer talks about the 64th verse really being a very a very telling verse here, really. He sort of talks about reminding yourself of the inherent value in practicing and enduring lines from the entire Tao Te Ching. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. He asks you to really think about that, to really put that into context of your own life. Is there something that you want to achieve? Is there something that you want to do? The idea is that with little steps, you can achieve whatever you want if you are part of this world that is constantly manifesting, growing, changing, developing every single day. And you have that power within you as well, if you choose to recognize it. That in itself is huge. Become a master anticipator as well, anticipating, thinking about things. This 64th verse really touched me because of the living by being here now. Again, like I said, it ties in with the yoga, it ties in with meditation, it ties in with being present, it ties in with all the mindfulness techniques that I do, it ties in with all of that. This idea is beautiful throughout all of that, and really the fundamental principle behind all of that as well, and I'm sure a million other little things. So that was living by being here now. So the next one I want to do, where's number 4? Here we go, number 4. Living without sickness. Now, again, I chose this. It's a really short one, this. Some of them are longer than others. Some of them are just a couple of lines. But this is a really short one. This is the 71st verse, and it's about living without sickness. So it says, knowing ignorance is strength. Ignoring knowledge is sickness. Only when we are sick of our sickness shall we cease to be sick. The sage is not sick, but is sick of sickness. This is the secret of health. Which is like a paradox in itself, isn't it? This is how I love it all. It's crazy. But I think that if I were to kind of go through it and dissect these 6 lines in the 71st verse of the Tao Te Ching, knowing ignorance is strength. All right, now that's about being humble. Knowing ignorance is strength. It's just about being humble, recognizing that, everybody's different and that strengths come in all manner of shapes and sizes and whatnot. Ignoring knowledge is sickness. And this is something that I think the majority of us do a lot. And I mean a lot. I mean, when you have a pain in your side that you don't go to the doctor about for 2 months, and then you wonder why it is that you've got like an ulcer or something like that, that is what is a sickness, is not holding yourself to I guess a discipline, a self-discipline that fills you up and shifts you, raises your vibration, raises your consciousness. Knowing ignorance is strength, ignoring knowledge is sickness. So when you block yourself off from that, when you blank out almost all the knowledge, there's an actual term for it in psychology, which is consistent dissonance. It's managing the mind way, or the beliefs, so that they remain in sync with your inherent beliefs. And that is ignoring knowledge is sickness. That is what people are doing when, you might suggest, for example, I thought you might like to just get some fish down you, for example, because, I want you're doing a test and I want you to have those extra omegas for your mind so that the cellular brain function or whatever. And you just completely ignore it and you go in and you get a B maybe. But if you hadn't ignored and you'd gone and done it and you'd looked after yourself and that sort of thing, then you may have got the A. So it's one of those things. Ignoring knowledge is sickness, and certainly something that I believe, but then I'm an avid learner. I love it. And then it says, only when we were sick of our sickness shall we cease to be sick. So and I think this is so, so true. Only when we are sick of our sickness shall we cease to be sick. The sage is not sick, but is sick of sickness. This is the secret of health. So that's where we are now. Now, only when we are sick of sickness shall we cease to be sick. When you've had enough of the pain, of the throbbing, of the dodgy guts, of whatever it is that you might be experiencing, only when you are sick of that, you've had it up to here, will you be able to stop being sick, because you have to, again, own it to be able to let it go, right? You have to be able to say, yeah, that's me, so that you can say, and I don't need it anymore. I don't want it anymore. I've moved on so much from that point. The sage is not sick, but is sick of sickness. This is the secret of health. The sage is not sick, but is sick of sickness. So a sage, revered, holistic, spiritual, whatever you want to call them, person, the sage is not sick, but is sick of sickness, sick of seeing everybody around him or her sick of seeing and having to hold space for people to heal, sick of all that sort of stuff, but mostly sick of the way that illness affects families and people and all that sort of thing. It's not just all about coping with the symptoms. A lot of it can be about waiting out times and really, like making it hard for yourself to let go of things, and to treat yourself and to look after yourself and, all those sorts of things. There's always a million different excuses for why you don't look after you. But I urge you to read the 71st verse of the Tao Te Ching, Living Without Sickness, because it really is a mindset. It's kind of like a mind game. And so, if that's the secret of health, and health is something that you're struggling with, I would absolutely recommend Dr. Wayne Dyer's book, Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life. So the last one that I wanted to go over with today is, put it over here, is the 29th verse. Now, this is a long one, okay? So I'm going to read it all out and then we'll break it down again. Do you think you can take over the universe and improve it? I do not believe it can be done. Everything under heaven is a sacred vessel and cannot be controlled. Trying to control leads to ruin. Trying to grasp, we lose. Allow your life to unfold naturally. Know that it's too hard a vessel for perfection. Just as you breathe in and breathe out, there is a time for being ahead and a time for being behind. A time for being in motion and a time for being at rest. A time for being vigorous and a time for being exhausted. A time for being safe and a time for being in danger. To the sage, all of life is a movement towards perfection. So what need has he for the excessive, the extravagant, or the outcome? So that last little bit really explains a lot of it. But just to go over why I felt like this verse was important is because it's about, again, releasing the control, releasing the greed, releasing the power that you may have. Like Donald Trump's exerting it all over a massive, massive country, but you may feel like you need to exert your strength and your power within your relationship or within, the family dynamic or the work dynamic, even just to be able to get some more money together and to be able to do the sort of things that you want to do. Do you think that you can take over the universe and improve it? I do not believe it can be done. Well, we can't, not in this lifetime anyway. That's not going to happen. But whether or not we believe we can is a thought process. And that I'm pretty sure that people will have decided or tried or opened their minds to the idea of a project going outside, and almost taking over the universe and all that sort of thing, and then trying to improve it, taking it outside and then saying, right, universe, you've got to move around this, really. You've got to move around what it is that, I'm bringing to the table. So do you think you can take over the universe and improve it? I do not believe it can be done. How could you improve millennia of light years and normal years and goodness knows what else going on up there, and becoming the font of all knowledge around it, for want of a better phrase, for becoming like the alpha female, for becoming the leader, the beginning of the gang. It's crazy, but if you are trying to hold things too tight, again, back to the other verse, the 14th verse, I think it was, if you're trying to hold things too tight, then those things will be the first thing to go because they won't want to be around anymore. You always almost like smothered them. And they don't want to be seeing that or feeling that anymore. So it says everything, under heaven is a sacred vessel and cannot be controlled. So that's anything. Now, I was, again, talking to my sister. She came over from Spain, so this is why we've had all this time together. But I was sort of saying to her about my idea with the bonsai tree. So I started up bonsai maybe 4 years ago now. We were living in Thailand, and I felt like, I kind of needed a hobby, and went down to a friend's house and we were just kind of hanging out. And a few other friends arrived, and with one of them, she brought a gentleman who inspired me to try Bondi tree growing, shall we say. Now, this is something that lasts a very, very long time, and it can be literally a life's work. But for me, it was trying to reconcile the beauty that I saw before me in these tiny little miniature trees and this not being tree cruelty. That was literally where I got with it, because as I began, when you train a bonsai tree, if you want the leaves to kind of go in a weird way, what you do is you wrap thin tubes of plastic around so that you can then mold the metal into the shape that you want, and the tree will grow within it. So you literally just kind of wrap it around the branch, and then tie it down, in the nape or something like that, and then in the top there, well, however you're going to do it, whatever you want to do. But if you are able to, what do I want to say, really, I suppose, if you feel like you can take over that tree and make it better than it was designed to be, better than its nature is, that's more the point, really, because everything grows to its own nature, right? Everything grows in perfection to its own nature. And what really didn't sit right with me with bonsai was when I started binding these trees and just thinking, now I'm just controlling its growth, and which I know is the whole point, but I just felt like, but isn't it just beautiful and perfect just as it is? Why am I trying to control this? This is an art form that really pushes control and encourages, changing things that were just beautiful to begin with anyway for your own gain. I think there's sometimes there can be a lot of that. And certainly, like, my example of the bonsai was my experience of it, because I came away thinking, oh, but it's just like, it would be like if somebody just wrapped metal around my arm and then began to bend it in all weird and wonderful places. That's not, I have a way of growing. My arm is not supposed to be bent round in a corkscrew often. If it was, I would be born like that, or there would be something that would enable that to happen. But there isn't, and it's not, and that's not the way it's supposed to be. So this is, I think, what one of the 29th verse is saying right at the beginning here, that, if you think you can take over the universe and improve it, if you really think that, I mean, just think about that for a second, like the majesty of the sun rising in the morning or setting in the evening. If you think you could have designed mountains better, recognize where you would have had that inspiration come from first off. But if you think you could do better, that's huge ego. That's huge, especially when we're talking on these sort of subjects. Then it says underneath, everything under heaven is a sacred vessel and cannot be controlled. Trying to control leads to ruin. Trying to grasp, we lose. So everything under heaven is a sacred vessel and cannot be controlled. And again, we're going back to us all being free spirits, not just us, everything and everyone. Nothing's supposed to be controlled. Yeah, maybe we want to put up a shack to be able to keep the rain off, something like that. But ultimately, we were all born perfect. We were all born with an opportunity and a dharma to fulfill. And look where we all are now. That to me is quite telling as well. Everything under heaven is a sacred vessel and cannot be controlled. Trying to control leads to ruin. So again, the same way with my bonsai tree, which eventually died because, I think it might have died actually because I just didn't know what to do with it anymore and had this sudden attack of consciousness and just didn't, just kind of left it then, I think, in a state of guilt. But everything under heaven is a sacred vessel and cannot be controlled. Trying to control leads to ruin, so don't do it. Trying to control other people, trying to control situations, trying to control decision making, trying to control anything. It's not good for you to believe that you have that influence and that ego, and it's not good for the person that you've kind of directed that on, because how would you respond? With a mind of your own, with a heart of your own, with a spirit of your own, how would you respond? I think it's like a rhetorical question. Trying to grasp, we lose. So again, trying to hold on, you're going to lose it. That's going to be the ultimate kind of test for you. And it goes on to say, allow your life to unfold naturally. Know that it too is a vessel of perfection. So just quickly stop on that one. Allow your life to unfold naturally. Okay. Know that it too is a vessel of perfection. Whatever happens, whatever you go through, whatever bad or good experiences that you have, they are designed for you. That is the idea behind the oneness of all of this, is that actually the consciousness is absolutely dedicated and desperate to find out about who you are and how you've created and what you've manifested and what you will bring to the world. Just as you breathe in and breathe out, there is a time for being ahead and a time for being behind, a time for being in motion and a time for being at rest, a time for being vigorous and a time for being exhausted, a time for being safe and a time for being in danger. So again, all the kind of polar opposites, there's a time for everything. There is absolutely time for everything that you want to do. And once you get your head around that, you can begin to breathe out at the side, the idea of like exam boards coming into your school in the next couple of days, or from getting, the job that you've been angling after and angling after and angling after. Allow your life to unfold naturally. Know that it too is a vessel of perfection. Just as you breathe in and breathe out, there is time for being ahead and a time for being behind. And again, I love that they've returned back to the breath here. Or Lasu has returned back to the breath, and being present within that. Um, I mean, it's just also relevant for now as well. You know, this is what kind of, it just keeps striking me. It's all just so relevant for now, and for, you know, for really being, really asking, I suppose, the generations of today to let go a little bit of all the control that they're, you know, being encouraged to adopt into their lives. It doesn't really matter if you don't go out the house without any makeup. You know, it doesn't matter if you are wearing clothes that don't have a designer label on. You know, none of that stuff matters. It's what is in here that matters. And that's absolutely a truth, because it's exactly how we all communicate, whether we know each other or we don't. We feel into the aura of somebody and we communicate through them. If we think that they're going to be a good influence on us, or something that would, you know, have an interest that would attract us. Then it says, to the sage, all of life is a movement towards perfection. So what need has he for the excessive, the extravagant, or the extreme? So again, just reiterating the fact that you don't need to have possessions to be wealthy, to be rich. You know, it's all about life. It's all about how much you get out of it, and how much, you know, how much time you spend in a state of joy. All of life is a movement towards perfection. So what use has he for the excessive, the extravagant, or the extreme? Right? He already has all those things. Life, source, God, ultimate universe, creation, higher consciousness, whatever you want to call it. We already have those things. We have an idea that we should always be better than we are. We have an idea that nothing will ever be good enough. We have an idea that we just have an idea that everything's so permanent, don't we? When you think about it, when it boils down to it, that's what it is. It's just this idea that everything's so permanent and can be held, and is absolutely fundamentally, that almost gets us, you know, in that dark headspace. The little last passage was, to the sage, all of life is a monument, is a movement towards perfection. I've got to get some glasses. So what need has he for the excessive, the extravagant, or the extreme? All of life is a movement towards perfection. Every single thing you see, you touch, you experience is perfection. So you have no need to cover anything. You don't need the excessive, you don't need the extravagant, you don't need the extreme, because you find beauty in the sunshine reflecting off of wet branches or wet leaves on the floor, you know, because you find awe in the swans that fly over the back garden of your house every evening at exactly the same time. You know, 6 o'clock, doesn't matter what time of the year it is, there they go at 6 o'clock, regular as clockwork. You know, if you are moving forward towards perfection, and you have an idea of what perfection is, let me tell you that when you get there, you won't label it as perfection. It will have to be something else, because it will have to be able to be understood, you know, in layman's terms, and so that you can just let go of it, because it doesn't need to be anything complicated. It doesn't need to be anything detailed. It doesn't need to have some crazy explanation or wild philosophy or any of that sort of stuff. It just is. It just is, and it's all you need. That oneness, that acceptance, that realization of who you are, where you've come from, and what it is that you can do to find peace in this earth, in this lifetime now. So this is living by natural law. And Dr. Dyer talks about, talking about, like, Albert Einstein commenting on this law. And he said, the scientist's religious feeling takes the form of rapturous amazement at the harmony of natural law, which reveals an intelligence of such superiority that, compared with it, all the systematic thinking and acting of human beings in an entirely insignificant reflection. This feeling is the guiding principle of his life and work. So the idea that there is a higher consciousness, a higher being, a higher something running it all for us, you know, it's completely his. It's not to do with us. This feeling is guiding the principle of his life and work. Learning how to live by natural law means letting go of the want for control over everything. It means saying to yourself, actually, just as it is perfect, is enough, is what it needs to be. That there's time for everything, that everything has its time, that when things come to an end, it's because they're meant to. And when something new starts, it's because it needs to. It has to start now, otherwise it won't get something done. I don't believe in chance. I don't believe in synchronicities. Well, I believe in synchronicities, but I don't believe in luck or any of the other things that we kind of dance around synchronicities. But it's just, this is why I wanted to read the 29th, because it's all about just letting go and giving up and allowing change, allowing things to move forward, and allowing people to move forward and to let go. And that's really kind of why I wanted to talk about the Tao Te Ching tonight, because ultimately it's all about getting into this flow of life and letting things go so they don't affect you too much. Let it go, the comments that have been made about you, perhaps. It's not your business what other people think of you. It doesn't matter. So let it go. Let go of the amount that you think you should be earning to be able to afford the lifestyle that you want to live. You will be surprised when you let things go, how quickly abundance floods into that void. There are so many reasons just to kind of let go and let be. And then, and you just are who you are. And then when you are who you are, of course, you're the ultimate divine representation of who it was, or who it is, sorry, that you were born to be. When you're standing in that place, then to share anything, to share the love for music, to share the love for poetry, or a narrative, or whatever it is, then you begin to inspire. And of course, inspire comes again from the mind, the heart, the soul. But I suppose really, it's just about being in that flow, and accepting all those things for your own. So, as I said, the Tao Te Ching is a small book. This is the translation by Stephen Mitchell. It's very small. You can see it's 81 verses. It will take you a while to read it. I'm just going to say that it will take you a while, and do go over it and do feel into your perception, because this is the thing. It doesn't matter. It also almost doesn't matter what I'm doing here right now. It doesn't matter that I'm giving you my perspective on it or have an idea of what it means or anything like that, because your perspective will be completely different, and all of it is perfect in its imperfectness. All of it is exactly what we need to be doing and exactly what we need to be seeing and how we need to be thinking, and all these things at the time that it is. All of it is in absolute perfection and in harmony. And that is the way of the Tao. That is living the way of the Tao. And that is living in peace and harmony, essentially, with nature. And that's what the Tao Te Ching is telling us, is that actually let go of all these things that upset you, let go of all these things that trigger you, let go of all these things that make you feel a certain way, that invoke memories that were given to you by somebody else a long time ago. Allow it all to go, and you will feel such peace, and you will feel such strength at the same time. It's a fabulous, fabulous book to read. And like I say, it's the sort of thing, write your name in it, and take it around with you, because I think this is one of those sort of books, good job it is thin, that you're going to be going over a lot in your lifetime. And of course, the other book, Dr. Wayne Dyer, Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life. This is a man's year's work, this book, and that's fantastic. But it's also a great reflection of a time that is long gone, and of a mindset that feels so desperately needed in our present day and age. So thank you so much for listening to me tonight. My name is Kirsty Bentley Taylor. This is This Happy Guru. If you want any more information, or if you'd like to connect with me on any of these subjects, if you've got any comments, anything like that, then please do email me or go via the website via www.thishappyguru.com, or contact me directly via email at kirsty@thishappyguru.com. I would love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your comments on this. So please do write. Thank you so much for listening to me. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Good night.
Humanity has been on an epic journey of discovery, learning the truth about the world we live in. New discoveries about the true origins of humanity, ancient history, free energy, as well as the systematic corruption of world governments are now on the forefront of our daily reality. Is the world headed towards destruction based on control and power? Or is an opportunity now being presented to shift and uplift into a higher consciousness? My name is Mel V, co-founder and creative director of Conscious Consumer Network, an independent broadcast network that was launched on the 1st of January 2015. Conscious Consumer Network provides full training and an interactive support network for all broadcasters, and we are always looking for inspiring and educational content.
Hi, this is Lainey Liberty.
And this is Miro Siegel.
Conscious Consumer Network has expanded to multiple broadcast locations, increasing our availability and reach across the world, remaining on the cutting edge of independent media. If we wish to create a better world, we must first create better media, geared towards real education instead of indoctrination.
You guys really are what changing the world is going to be about. It's educating kids at a grassroots level.
Dare to seek a better world. Support independent media.